few years ago, I moved with my family right before I started college. Unfortunately, it was kind of far from the university I had been accepted into. So I had been trying to find a place to rent close to my university. My dad helped me and showed me an ad on Craigslist. There was a nice looking house for rent, and it was close to my university. I decided to set up a meeting to go check out the place. I showed up in the afternoon and unfortunately, I was alone. My dad said I was an adult and a big guy, so I shouldn't worry about meeting this person. This old guy greeted me and then goes, "You'll have to follow me to get to the house for rent." I was confused and said, "Your ad said this was the house for rent. Why do I have to go somewhere else?" He says, "This is my house. I'll take you to the one that's for rent." I'm a little concerned at this point and followed him to his other place. I figured if things didn't look right, I'd just leave. We get there and I notice the house looks bad and it looks like people were in it. I didn't see other cars around, so this seemed odd. He looks at me and says, "Don't you want to check it out?" I said, "I don't know. This isn't what was in your ad and looks like other people are there." He tells me that the other people are checking it out and I could join them. Something just felt weird about the whole thing and I told him I wasn't interested anymore. This place looked in bad shape from the outside and appeared to have people in the house. When he asked why I wasn't interested, I told him it was too far a drive for school and work. He got mad at me and accused me of wasting his time. I said, "I'm not the one advertising a house and then telling the person it's not the one for rent." He began to glance nervously towards the house and asked if I was sure I didn't want to check it out. I told him no and left. He never contacted me again, thankfully. I'm not sure what his intentions were, but something just felt wrong. Maybe he was just trying to show me the house. But I didn't like that he lied about the house to begin with, and that there were people inside the house. I'm not sure what was going on there, but I didn't really want to find out. I also didn't like how he kept looking at the house when he was asking if I was sure I didn't want to check it out. It seemed so bizarre how he went from being mad at me to getting kind of desperate for me to go inside.
When I was 26, I moved to New York City from a small town upstate. I was subletting a room in an apartment in Brooklyn. And when I say room, I mean closet with no windows. Upon moving in, I quickly started looking for a new place because the woman I was living with was a complete nightmare. That's a whole other story. I was checking out rooms advertised on Craigslist. In the past, I had had boyfriends accompany me on such visits, but I was single at the time and had no other choice but to go alone. I went to view one apartment and had made arrangements with the realtor to meet at such and such a time. He had long dreads and arrived on a skateboard. He showed me around the empty apartment, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm alone with a stranger in an empty apartment. This is maybe not the safest situation. Yet, for some reason, I continued chatting with him, and perhaps in an attempt to overcompensate for having had this thought, I tried to seem cool and laid back. And to demonstrate this, I started asking him questions about skateboarding. I realized how lame this is in retrospect, but at that age, I was a big people pleaser. I was also in the best shape of my life and tended to dress very revealingly as well, and I'm pretty sure that this came across as me flirting or being available. I remember it seeming weird the way the guy reacted to me at that point. I also noticed as I was talking to him that he had a teardrop tat under one of his eyes. I don't know what it meant. Then he says to me, "You're cool. You know, I have a room for rent in my apartment. Do you want to see that?" I said, "Yeah, sure." Stupidly. He says, "It's not far from here. We can walk." As we are walking, he sees a friend of his. This friend is wearing what looks like a green felt Peter Pan hat with a large feather in it, totally unironically. He is a big guy with a serious, intimidating presence. I remember feeling like this guy was super sketchy and had an ominous vibe. If I had to describe a pimp, this guy would be it. No one else would have had the audacity to wear that hat. The skater realtor says to his friend, "We're going to my place. She's coming. Do you want to come?" The friend looks me up and down and agrees that he will come too. There is a profound sense of objectifying me, and I start feeling really unsettled, like this is a very bad idea. I start walking behind them a little, and kind of trailing further and further behind to get some distance. I feel at this point like I don't know how to get out of the situation, but want to. I can kind of hear their conversation where the man in the hat says something to the effect of, well, if the person is stupid enough to get themselves in that situation in the first place, very loudly, almost like he wants me to hear it as some kind of warning. I stop in my tracks. I was overcome with a sense of being in danger, like an alarm was going off in my body telling me to stop and leave immediately. I kept walking for maybe another 30 seconds, trying to figure out how to leave and say, "Hey, I don't think I'm going to be able to check it out after all. I really do have to be going." The guy in the skateboard stops. He looks at me and says, "New York City is such a transient place. People always coming and leaving. You can never keep track of them." Or something like that. I'm just very aware of his teardrop tattoo at this point. I say thanks and bye. And what really struck me as strange was that he said then, "Well, I can get away faster on my skateboard than you can anyways," and skated off. I'm not sure what I escaped that day, but I'm pretty certain it was something very bad.
I really love Craigslist. I'd estimate I've met maybe 300 people for buying/selling stuff, and for the most part, everyone was nice and harmless. However, I did run into 2 creeps who made me rethink meeting strangers alone to sell stuff. FYI, I was an early 20s female at the time. First guy. It's 2009 and I'm staying with my parents for Christmas holidays in a small town in Florida. I'm going through my childhood room and cleaning out the closet and find a giant CD holder full of maybe 100 really shitty CDs. Think Nickelback, Aqua, Chumbawamba. It's the 21st century. No one uses CDs anymore. I figure I'd try to sell the CDs on Craigslist. I put up a listing. 100 CDs from the late 90s and early to mid 2000s. Mix of pop and rock. All for $35 OBO. The next day I get an email from a guy named John around 2 p.m. He says that he's in town temporarily and that he wants the CDs. He says he can pick them up after dinner around 8 p.m. I email him back my address and number and tell him to text or call when he's on his way. 8 p.m. comes and goes. I figure I've been stood up, which happens often on Craigslist. No big deal. My dad works for a liquor distribution company and would often do demonstration nights at restaurants and bars, and would come home at bar closing time. This night he gets home at around 3 a.m. I'm in college and a total night owl, so I'm still up probably eating junk food, surfing the web, and watching horror flicks. I hear a car pull up, look out the window, and see him sitting in his car eating food. He often stops at Taco Bell on his way home, and eats it in his car so my mom doesn't know he's cheating on his diet. Maybe 10 minutes later, my dad comes in and shouts my name. "Pizza succubus, there is someone here to see you. Can you please tell me why a strange man is showing up at our house at 3 a.m.? I go downstairs and my dad says some guy pulled up in the driveway and asked for me by name. I walk outside with my dad and this guy who is maybe mid-30s gets out of his car. He says he's the Craigslist guy who wanted to buy my CDs. My dad goes back in the house. I tell the guy it's really, really late to just be stopping by, especially without texting first. However, since I'm awake, I go and grab the CDs. He then proceeds to drone on and on about why he's buying the CDs. He says he's engaged to a woman he loves very much, and all he wants to do is make her happy. He said that last week someone broke into her car and stole all of her CDs. She was really upset, and he wanted to make it up to her. He looked on Craigslist and found my listing, and was really excited because I had a bunch of the CDs she used to have. Weird thing is, I didn't list any of the artists or bands because I was lazy, but I didn't think about that at the time. Anyway, he said he was getting it for her as a Christmas surprise. He said he was staying with his future in-laws somewhere nearby and that their family BBQ ran really late, which is why he never made it at 8 p.m. By this point, I've lost interest and say something along the lines of, next time you should probably call or text the Craigslister instead of just showing up. I hand him the CDs, he hands me cash, and I go back inside. 3 days later, I start getting texts from an unknown number. Hey, I don't know my way around this town. Care to tour guide? Winky face. I could really use a massage. Where can I get a massage in this town? You're Asian. Do you do massage? Would you take $40 for a 1-hour massage? Happy ending? Me, finally. Who the fuck is this? Him. Oh, sorry, I bought the CDs from you the other day. Do you squirt? I didn't respond, obviously. I show my friends that night and we laugh it off. Then the next day I get more texts. I still have your address. I'm at the Bank of America near your neighborhood. I just got the $40, babe. Happy face. Only 3 minutes away. Are you home? You fucking cunt. Stop ignoring me, I'm almost there. I immediately run downstairs to tell my dad and mom. It was nighttime, so we shut off all the lights outside and inside my house. My mom, little brother, and I went to my parents' room in the back of the house. My dad hid behind the curtains of the front bay window with a shovel in his hand. A few minutes later, I heard him run down the front hallway, fling the front door open, and run outside. We heard some faint shouting, so we all walked out of the bedroom. By the time my dad came back in with his shovel, his face red and his hair all disheveled. Apparently the guy came driving down our street really slowly. My dad recognized the car and went running outside with the shovel, yelling obscenities at the guy. The guy peeled off and never came back or texted me again. Second guy. I was moving from Florida to DC and was going to load up my car as much as I could with stuff. However, I lived on the 3rd floor plus a bit of a walk from my assigned parking spot, so I figured I could use some help. I posted an ad on Craigslist gigs. I said I was looking for someone to help me load some heavy items, like TV, desk, etc. into my car. Less than an hour's worth of work and I'd pay $45 or whatever. I give the very first responder my number and address, and he shows up. He was probably 5'8" and 350 pounds of pure fat. The sweat and smell coming off this guy in the Florida heat was pretty nauseating, but I didn't care as long as he did the job right. While he was carting heavy stuff, I was loading lighter things. Whenever I'd go upstairs to grab another load, he'd hurry after me so he could walk up the stairs behind me. I had the door propped open so he didn't have to worry about me needing to unlock the door for him or anything. When he'd followed me up the stairs, he made these weird grunting noises like, but I assumed it was because he was out of shape. Eventually everything's loaded properly, save for some sweat smears on my stuff. I pay him and he drives off. I go back in my place to finish loading and cleaning. I go out maybe 45 minutes later to put another load in my car, and I see his truck is back, parked across the street from mine. He's sitting in the driver's seat looking at me. When he sees me notice him, he looks away. I walk over to his window and knock. He rolls it down and I ask if he needs any help or if he was lost. I was really confused as to why he had come back, and I knew he didn't live near me. He didn't say anything, just rolled his window back up and drove off. I'm okay, whatever. Of course, 5 minutes later, my phone starts blowing up. I don't recognize the numbers, so I don't answer the calls. Then texts start rolling in. Him. I bet you taste salty and sweet. Me. Who is this? Him. Your pussy. Him. What you up to tonight? I can come back over. I get this sinking feeling it's the Craigslist guy. He had never called me about the job when I gave him my number, so I didn't know what his number was. Him. I like your pink panties. Then I realized he was looking up my dress when I was walking up the stairs. I immediately feel like a total idiot for wearing a dress that day. He then started dialing my number over and over again. I didn't know how to do the block number thing through Sprint, so I had to just turn my phone off. Later I was with my guy friend grabbing a bite and turned my phone back on. I got another text from the guy about how he wanted to toss me around like a rag doll and tie me up and make me beg for it. I show the text to my friend and tell him the story. The Craigslist creep then proceeds to start blowing up my phone again. So my friend answers and says he's going to cut his dick off and feed it to his dog if he ever contacts me again. I moved the next day, so I never had to worry about him randomly showing up in his truck again. Since then, I've bought and sold stuff on Craigslist, but I always make people meet me at a public place. I also stalk people's email addresses, Google Plus accounts, etc.
My wife and I were looking for a used car on Craigslist and found one we were really interested in. We contacted the seller and told him we would meet him at a very public mall in an hour. He responded that he wouldn't be available until after work at 5. We agreed to meet him at the mall at 5:30 p.m. We arrive at the mall a little early and soon get a text that he's running late. So we wait. And wait. And wait. Then finally get a text around 6:30 that he should be at the mall soon. This was in late fall, so it was already getting dark and we were starting to worry that the mall wouldn't be as busy soon. A short while later he texts that we should meet him at another address around 30 minutes away in a rougher area of the city. I look up the address and see it's a casino/gas station right off the interstate. I figure it would still be busy around 7, so we head over. We pull into the parking lot and I don't see a car. My wife finally says, "Is that it?" and points to a mid-sized SUV hatchback. It certainly looked like the right car, but it was in a dark part of the parking lot, squeezed between some parked 8-wheelers. As two petite women, we were very wary of going over there. We locked the doors and drove over. It was definitely the car, but it was parked in the darkest, most reclusive, least visible spot in the whole parking lot, with the hatch open. No lights were on inside the car, and no one was around or in the car. We stopped for a couple of seconds to see if someone would come greet us, and when no one did, I drove away. I parked under the casino sign right next to the entrance of the parking lot, and texted the guy my location. He responded with, "I'm over here, by the semis." We left immediately. It was all too weird. So, creepy Craigslist guy? Let's not meet.
Some context. I'm a guy, and 18 at the time. I was planning on moving out of state for college, and I didn't want to pay the ridiculously high price for student housing. So me and my mom turned to Craigslist for better options. We found a lot of places near the school and for a reasonable price. But one we found would forever live in infamy. We found a place for $500 a month in the area near the school, so we instantly took it. On the day before my school's orientation, me and my parents drove down to the school and rented a hotel room for 2 nights. On the way down, I was texting with the guy about the room, to which he gave a description, as well as the address to where I would be going. Note that I was the one that was filtering through the options, while my mom sent links for any new openings. After texting back and forth, he asked me to send a pic of myself, right after he sent one of himself. But by examining his pic, I began to feel a bit uneasy about it, especially after he failed to respond to any of my texts after the pic was sent. Even the one where I asked him what time would be good for me to check the place out. That night, I talked to my dad about it, and we decided to go to the address while my mom was asleep in the hotel. It was then that my suspicions proved to be true, as we were greeted with a trashy-looking trailer home with a white pickup parked next to it. Thankfully, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, so he couldn't have seen us. The next day, after orientation, me and my dad explained our findings to Mom, where we decided that my enrollment at the school would be pushed back until the fall semester. I was starting mid-quarter, until I could find a place to stay. So from what I could guess, the guy thought I was an 18-year-old female looking for a place to move, and that I would be checking the place out by myself. So when it was revealed that I was a fully grown man, I'm 6'2" by the way, he must have realized that his plans to prey on a teenager weren't coming into fruition. And no, I didn't catfish him. It was on his own assumption, as it was mentioned that I was male in my email, though the name Jay must have made him think I was a girl. So, to the creepy guy who thought he would lure a teenager into his house, let's not meet.
My roommate V was always at her boyfriend's place, so I was living essentially alone in a 2-bedroom apartment, and our friend Esme was crashing with me while looking for her own place. She found a place nearby renting a master bedroom with attached bathroom, female only, for way cheap. We checked out the Google Street View on my laptop, and it looked like a cute little beach house. She rode her bike over to check it out alone. The house was right by the beach and tons of people are always around, so we thought nothing of it. She said it was 2 beach-type white guys. A young, disheveled stoner guy, and a middle-aged parrot-head guy that would close talk while giving her obvious elevator eyes the whole time. She's a pretty, petite Mexican girl, and was 21 but looked younger. And the older guy kept saying she was just what they were looking for, kinda slowly in what she described as a uber creepy voice. The younger guy just stared and followed them around. She thought it was odd they each slept in the tiny guest rooms and were renting out the master bedroom, but decided to take a look at it anyway. She said it was a really nice room with a big, heavy wooden 4-poster bed in the middle of the room that looked like it belonged in a castle, and the bathroom had a huge shower with multiple shower heads on the walls, like it was built for a bunch of people to shower at once. She didn't like being in the back bedroom with the 2 guys looming over her, so she said it was really stuffy and she wanted to make sure her unlocked bike in the front yard was okay. She all but ran to the front yard, and once she was outside with bystanders, she felt much better. So she's standing in the front yard with the older guy, and he's explaining that she can move in right away, but the bed has to stay exactly where it is. It comes with the room and is bolted to the floor so it can't be moved. They have special sheets for it and everything so she can bring all her stuff, but can never move that bed. Also, she can have friends over, but only if they're also young women or girls, no men. And they can sleep over, but also need to sleep in the bed. The hardwood floor was just too uncomfortable. The couches in the living room were suede, so no one can sleep on them. All these reasons why a big pile of girls need to sleep on the bed. So she's sufficiently creeped out by this guy and texts me to come over. I ride my bike over, and as I'm pulling up, she's leaving. We start to ride a little away, and he yells out after us. It's mandatory, but we always have a blast. She kinda shudders, and I ask her what's up. She says she'll tell me over drinks, so we ride to the nearest little beach bar. She explains about the room, the bed, the guys, and then tells me part of the deal is a mandatory skiing trip to Lake Tahoe in Northern California each year. She can invite girls on the trip that have been to the house before if the guys think they're cool enough. It's free for her and her girlfriends, but mandatory that she go with the guys as their official woman. There would be other men there, but they all brought their own women. He said it like the women would be assigned to them or something. So our minds start racing and we convince ourselves that the bedroom and a trip are some elaborate webcam/BDSM situation or something. Needless to say, she never moved in there or took them up on their free ski weekend offer. V ended up moving in with her boyfriend, and Esme moved in with me for a couple years. She was an awesome roommate.
So, this happened a few years ago, and I just very recently remembered it. For a little background, I'm a 20-year-old female from Germany. When I was 17, I was in a long-distance relationship and was desperate for some extra cash because I spent most of my pocket money on train tickets to go see my boyfriend. So I put up a babysitting ad on the German equivalent of Craigslist. I soon got a call, not an hour after putting up the ad. I was greeted by the voice of a man. The conversation started off innocently enough, with him telling me he had an 8-year-old and needed someone to watch him after school, as both him and his wife were working full-time. I told him sure, I could do that. I expected him to ask me about my experience with kids, or something to that effect. But instead, he went on to tell me that his son could be a little difficult. I told him I didn't mind, and that I'd find a way to deal with it. Would you hit him if he's being naughty? I was very taken aback by this question. I'm very against violence against children. Even spanking is child abuse in my eyes. I told the man that, and that I'd do my best to find a non-violent way to deal with problems. But what if he's hitting you? Would you hit it back? I replied with a firm no. At this point, I was starting to feel angry, as it dawned on me that this was obviously a common occurrence for this child to be hit. He kept throwing scenarios at me and asked me if I would discipline his son in that situation, and that his old baby sister apparently frequently spanked him. I eventually told him, as politely as I could, that if a parent chooses to use spanking as a form of punishment, that is their business. But as a babysitter, I had no right to hit a child. He was silent for a while. Then he asked if I would bathe his son. I honestly don't remember what my exact response was, but it definitely wasn't yes. He went on explaining that his son was supposed to take a bath every Thursday, and that he hated taking baths. He wanted to know if I would make him get in the bathtub and if I would strip him naked. At this point, all the red flags came up. I dodged the question best I could and said something to the effect of, things like that are a parent's job, not a babysitter's, and that the parent should make him take his bath in the evening after work. But he kept pressing, asking things like if I'd wrestle his naked son into the bath or spank his blank butt if he refused. I just kept saying no, but eventually he said he'd call me back. I removed my phone number from the ad immediately and told people to contact me via email instead. I also got a new phone number, for reasons unrelated to this unsettling phone call, a few weeks later, so I luckily never heard from him again. I just hope his son, should he actually have one, which I honestly kind of doubt, is okay.